Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to our April 30th, 2025 Jupyter Frontends call. And also, we have a special edition today. We have some of the backend team joining us to collaborate. So, welcome to them as well. I'm Danielle, I'll be your host today. This is a place for contributors to connect with each other and the community around JupyterLab and Notebook Frontends Accessibility. And a special welcome to our first time participants. Thank you so much for joining. And please keep in mind that this meeting is being recorded and it'll be posted to YouTube for everyone to view, and we follow the Jupyter Code of Conduct. We'll go ahead and jump into the agenda. And if anyone has any other topics they'd like to add, please go ahead and do so. The first topic on the agenda is Andre had a topic about looking for feedback on a JupyterLab issue. Andre, do you want to go through that first?
Yep. Yes, please. Hey everyone. Let me send the link to the PR I'm talking about into the chat, so everyone could look independently, and also let me share my screen so I could show you the PR I'm talking about. So I'm looking like for general feedback. Already had some feedback in the comments from Mike, but would love, more opinions. So currently dialog component shows checkbox if there is a checkbox, and buttons on the same line. So essentially, if like a viewport is wide enough, right? Because it's all the same flex, right? Like horizontal flex or vertical is flex boxes, if the viewport is narrow. So to me, this looks weird. UI UX is always somewhat like individual, right? Not always subjective, but I wanted to get kind of feedback from the community. So I thought why it looks weird to me and to a couple of other people I asked. Probably because like macOS, Microsoft Web Suite, and other software where I see dialogues a lot, they all have like checkboxes on a separate line versus buttons. I don't have like access to Linux, so if anyone has access to Linux, like the most popular, distributions and like desktops, I would love to get inputs. So essentially, what this issue proposes is to change dialog, and I would be open to work on it for sure. To display a checkbox on a separate line, we could essentially put a vertical flex box where like checkbox and all buttons would be a member of, while buttons would be a member of a separate horizontal flex box. So yeah, that's it for me. You can give comments asynchronously by commenting here or in the notes, or synchronously by speaking out. Thank you.
Thanks, Andre. Any feedback on that topic, team?
Okay, but uh, I guess that there is no like pointed feedback. Is there anyone opposing to like making this change?
So is the justification for the change consistency and accessibility, or is the justification something different?
User experience. Yeah, UI UX, better UI UX.
So, I mean, if there's no objection and it's not going to change the accessibility profile, we can roll it out. And, if anyone has, if it does negatively impact someone, we'll fix the bugs. And if it doesn't, cool. I mean, you're soliciting opinions and not getting much. It seems fairly uncontroversial. So I think the main qualifier should be that at the very least, it does not harm the accessibility of it, and potentially maybe it even makes it easier, because if you're putting checkboxes on a single line and making their label big and, you know, easy to hit. Like if that actually is good, so much the better, right?
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much, Andre, for going through that. Just a reminder, if anyone has any like joint topics they'd like to discuss today, please get those on the agenda. Anything we could talk about that impacts, I guess, front end and back end thing would be really good.
I mean, I would nominate Andrew to talk about the chat issue that he brought up last week, potentially.
Yeah, that'd be a good one because we brought up the we brought up the need for broader input, so maybe that'd be a good one. What do you think about adding that to the agenda, Andre?
Like a deletion in the chat?
To be honest, I don't remember the issue last week. I just remember it was about chat, and we thought, hey, wouldn't it be nice if some server folks were here? And today, at the very least, we have Nick and Ian here and Mike as well. But, you know, maybe it still won't solicit that much feedback, but at least there's a slightly broader audience and you can try it out.
Actually, I'm not looking for feedback anymore, but I guess I could share updates.
No, that's cool. There's no reason to like push through stuff. If it's a done deal next time, you know.
Yeah, it's done. So my PR was reviewed and merged by Brichet. Thank you very much. And also I have done a release and after like getting a confirmation from Brichet. So yeah, if anyone is interested, you can use this new release.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Yeah, if anyone has anything else on their mind that could use broader review, let's get those on the agenda as well. William, you had a topic about previous discussions about nats.io. Do you want to go through that?
Sure. Yeah, this should be really quick, and it's not that directly related to Jupyter, but a couple of weeks ago, I mentioned a pub sub style system that I think, or at least I thought would be potentially very useful to the Jupyter project. It's Apache licensed, etc. But like a big weird thing has broke out with them, similar to what happened with CockroachDB and Terraform and a lot of other projects where it's being relicensed under a non-open source license. So I basically just wanted to retract my endorsement of Nats that I made a few weeks ago in this meeting, unfortunately. Full disclosure, since I was so enthusiastic a few weeks ago about that. And also just to reiterate my appreciation for the way the Jupyter project is organized and distributed across many companies with a wide range of decision makers and involvement with the Linux Foundation. So thanks to everybody. That's it.
Thanks, William.
Mm-hmm.
Next up on the agenda, Darian has a great update about foundation funds use and priorities.
Hey guys, yeah, so this isn't really gonna be all that substantive, but last week, instead of a meeting of the Jupyter Foundation's governing board, we had two separate meetings with groups who are, one, interested in proposals to grow the community and how to fund those, and another, a technical subcommittee with the goal of improving Jupyter software quality. We used the JupyterLab desktop issue as kind of like a guiding example, but it isn't like, let's specifically address this one thing. This one thing coming up via the actual maintainers is like indicative of just the question of what do we maintain? What do we support? What does Project Jupyter actually release? And like, what are the, when people have deployments that rely on packages that they install, and those packages are published by us, what sort of assurances are we giving them, right? So this will take some back and forth and some drafting, but the rough idea we want to pursue is, suppose we went as representatives of the Jupyter Foundation's governing board, the people who, vote on, let's spend X dollars on Y. What if we went to each sub-project and said, hey, what are the Git repos and package names that you would like to put on a list of, these are the things that this sub-project actually is committed to maintaining, and we'll publish some sort of document that says what the support expectations for this are. The way we did for Notebook, the way we did for Lab, but for everything that we want to say the Frontends sub-project is actually committing to. And then everything else, we can say, look, we'll still put a policy there, and that policy will be, this is an official release, but it's not a supported release or whatever. Like we might, because we have tons and tons of repos and packages that we want to keep putting out, but not necessarily have the same weight behind them as, Jupyter Hub, right? So with that as the thing, we figured, okay, well, the Frontends team has already come to say, we want to support JupyterLab desktop, right? And they've already come out and officially published that they want to support Notebook and JupyterLab and MB Classic, right? So that's 4 products that are named in docs. People have written saying, hey, we want to do this. So, we can go through and add to that whatever it is, project by sub-project. So I think the next step is for that group in the Jupyter Foundation Governing Board to, come forward with a draft to start working on, and then approach the people and sub-projects who are interested in this and get their feedback and draft it probably somewhere in a PR so that people can comment, and try to make the first sort of application of this be JupyterLab desktop, because it's kind of urgent. Nick, you're right about the Backstage instance helping people form this opinion. But the reality is, like, there are individuals named on sub-project councils who have to commit to what they're going to support or not. So the mechanism they use to do that being actual metrics on these things would be great, right? But like also, they already know, irrespective of installs, which ones they have to support, like, I don't know, say IPython or IPyKernel, something like that, where currently, like, it's ad hoc support, but really it belongs on a list of critical. Jupyter is going to backstop this, and if it doesn't get community backing, then, it'll be the kind of thing where, as long as that sub-project's council is voted to say, this issue right here is on the backlog of funded issues, then at least there will be some backstop contractual support that maybe the foundation can pay for. And the other piece of this is, that's like making sure things don't fall through the cracks. But, the other priority is, let's grow the community, because at the end of the day, it's not really our aim for the Jupyter Foundation to basically be paying software engineers to build Jupyter, right? That's supposed to be something we build a community to do, but we also want to make sure nothing falls through the cracks. So it's like it's a two-prong, like, we have to grow that organic capability, but at the same time, we have to make sure, if you're relying on Jupyter stuff, it doesn't fall out of support. That's all I have.
Any questions or feedback about that, anyone?
Thank you, Darren, for kind of like, I don't know, at least part. I'm not sure, like, if you're leading the whole process, but at least for presenting it to us, to our group. Thank you so much. It's very important and probably not easy. Thank you.
Thanks. It's absolutely not all me. I'm the person who is on this call talking about it, but I assure you, there's like people doing more and real work on it. The particular person I'm thinking of most proximate was, last week I met with Ben Bastian, who works on the Colab team at Google, and he is on the Jupyter Foundation board. He's super interested in this. And so we had a conversation where we looked at this particular issue and we looked at the feedback on the, well, when I say this particular issue, I mean JupyterLab Desktop, but also that issue that I linked, the one where people put in their ideas. And then I think he's written up a draft to show the broader foundation this week, and then we'll take it up from there. So yeah, it's like a bunch of people.
Thanks, Terry.
Cheers.
All right, thanks so much. Next up on the agenda, Eli has an announcement about Jupyter Open Studio Day.
Yeah, good morning, afternoon, evening. This will be no shock to, I think, anyone on the call at this point. In about 3 weeks, Bloomberg is hosting this year's New York Jupyter Open Studio Day. And it's going to be a full day event. Food is provided. It's a very unstructured chance to connect with the community, work on whatever has been of interest to you anywhere in the Jupyter stack, and just, come together and foster community there. So I know that everyone here has heard the pitch probably a few times at this point, but please do reach out to anyone you know who's in the New York area or would get there, who you think would be interested in attending. I've put the announcement in the meeting minutes, and that links to the registration page.
All right, thanks so much, Eli. That sounds like a fun event.
Yep.
And thanks for hosting that. That's really good.
Thank you so much, Eli. I'll share it with my team. We have a currently member in New York. I wanted to ask, I remember there was some talk about maybe Bloomberg having a similar event in Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. Do you know something about that? Is it not planned anymore?
We don't have anything locked in yet, but we're thinking that perhaps doing it around JupyterCon so that folks who are traveling out to California anyway, it's not right next to San Diego, but we'll try to make it convenient for folks to attend both events if they can. So expect around that time of year.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thanks, Ely. Next up, Mike has a few topics. You want to go through those, Mike?
Sure. Let me start with a CI failure. So earlier today, Jeremy was trying to release JupyterLab 4.3x, so a batch of bug fixes that we merged recently. But there was a CI issue of, I think, setup tools deprecating develop, and it's not working anymore, but that was a minor thing. Now there is another issue where in the workflow where we are testing minimum versions support, and on that branch we actually have not dropped Python 3.8 yet, and we haven't added testing on 3.13. And just as we merged the fix for the previous issue, a new one cropped up. It is failing during the stage where we are installing Hatch using pipex. And neither of those two had any release at this time, or even in this week. So it might be like a dependency or a dependency which is causing this. And it's just like something was released into the wild without properly tagging the supported Python versions and using syntax from the newer Python. So ABC meta object is not subscribable. That's basically what is suggesting that this is what I think it is. Now, I didn't have very good luck troubleshooting it. It is like, the problem is it's not in our code base and I don't immediately see where it is. I think I know how to find out, but just wanted to see if anyone saw that recently. Otherwise, I will go and add a bunch of debug logs on the CI and yeah, hope that I can debug that. So the link to the issue, if anyone is curious or sees that later today, is in the meeting notes and in the chat. Moving on, just a quick note that IPython had 2 point releases, 9.2 and 8.36. Very small one, or shouldn't cause any issues, but since we have also the kernels folks on the call, and just for general awareness. And finally, not finally, second to last, I'm preparing for to release a Lumino patch with accessibility fixes. If anyone would like to review the pull requests, linked, there isn't very much in this pull request, so I guess it doesn't require expertise, just double checking that I'm not committing something that I shouldn't be. And finally, wanted to highlight a discussion that was opened by Martin yesterday around problems with virtual scrolling and the full windowing mode for notebooks that we have. And I think this discussion both highlights all the challenges that we are currently facing, edge cases and problems that users are facing. Also, I'm trying to separate what is caused by the windowing mode and what is caused by other components. But I think it might be useful for the future release planning to potentially focus on implementing a better windowing mode or making a decision that maybe we'll switch the default because now there are options. There's a possibility of using content visibility to achieve what we're trying to do with the full windowing mode, whereas it was not possible back then when we originally were implementing the full windowing mode, just because the browsers didn't support it. And now the support is at a level where it is considered baseline by an MDM. Not all features are on the baseline level, so I'm not actually sure if the hidden until found for search support is fully supported. Just checking it right now. No, it's not supported by Firefox yet, but the baseline functionality is already fully supported by all major browsers.
Is there what's the component this would have the window panel, which aspect of it would change?
So it would be like a full rewrite of windowing. Basically, it would be much closer to not having a windowing than having a windowing. It would be something like the defer mode, because we wouldn't want to attach all the cells at the same time, I think. But we wouldn't be detaching or hiding cells manually at all. Instead, the browser would take responsibility of not painting, not rendering the contents by using the content visibility attribute. We would be telling browser, if it's out of the viewport, this content doesn't need to be rendered.
Okay, this is something that if we can get right, fixes so many of our problems. There's a few people on my team who are interested in working on this, and I think it's pretty big. We should try to roadmap this, break it up into some issues, and do it without it. Like one of the problems with the original version was how much of it was only in one or two people's heads, and it became difficult to then go in and try to optimize afterwards. Whereas now, if we have better APIs to do it, and we have a better idea of how to do it because we've already attempted it and we already have several modes because the attempt is not like universally better, then let's try to do this one, you know, a little bit of planning up front. I'm happy to work on this. I'm happy to also bring in a few other people. It's like the performance of lab is actually one of the main pain points people encounter. So is the extension system. There's like, you know, there's like 3 or 4 things that are like really rough edges and painful experiences. One of them is performance. So yeah, I'm happy to work on this.
Yeah, so something regarding the performance, which I haven't mentioned, is like there's no promise, there's no guarantee that we will get the same performance with this content visibility mode as we are getting with the current full windowing mode. My suspicion would be it might be a little bit worse because we are not removing some of the JavaScript connections. Like these are still live DOM objects which are fully attached to the DOM tree. But on the other hand, we are using browser native code, which might have even better performance. So it's like it remains to be seen what are the benefits and potential shortcomings of this solution. And there might be some, like browsers do have bugs. And one of the issues that we are facing with the full windowing mode is just because of a bug in Chromium. So
Totally.
And it's a new technology. So yeah, we don't know what we will find, but it's very promising, I would say.
I think that that's right. And I think it's possible. I think it's possible, strictly speaking, that we will use more CPU cycles and more RAM because it'll literally be doing more work, but also that the user experience will feel smoother and faster anyway. Like, I think all of those things are possible. So, and at the end of the day, I kind of don't care how much RAM or CPU we use if the user doesn't notice or care, you know? So it's totally worth, one, do an exploratory, like, okay, fine, let's do like minimum viable tests to make sure we're not like completely breaking the performance. But if it's not, then yeah, let's pursue it. Because the other aspect of this is, like many other things, where we got there first and we adopted something that's a pseudo standard and later we dropped it for the real standard. This is the same thing. Like, we have this habit of doing this because we want things that are not yet in all the browsers, but we want that functionality, right? So like, we didn't have symbol everywhere, so we used tokens, you know, and like we didn't have iterator support everywhere, so we wrote our own iterator, and then we had to rewrite to use native iterators. And this is another thing just like that.
Speaking of tokens, by the way, real quick, I guess was that the main rationale behind using tokens? I was wondering what the thinking was rather than using UUIDs or something.
Oh, the token is, it has two aspects that are really valuable. One is because it's a class, we get to sneak in a bunch of metadata there, but that's like secondarily. We didn't initially use it that way. The initial reason was because it's an in-memory instance. It's a const, it's a variable of something. So you do identity checks. You can't just say, is this UUID identical to a different string that has a UUID? You specifically want to say, is this the thing that came out of this library? And I'm passing it around as a reference everywhere within this application. And the application isn't doing an equality check. It's doing an identity check to say this token is associated with this particular plugin.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. And the other thing it can cause is exactly that. If you have two versions of a package, you now have two tokens and the two things in memory, and they're not going to match. But yes, so symbol is a native thing in JavaScript that just wasn't in all the browsers we initially wanted to support. But symbol also has this quality of every symbol is unique. So you check for identity, you don't check for equality.
So coming back to the window mode, I just say on the record, I would be very interested in that getting into 4.5 and happy to review and work, maybe also work on this. Need to confirm how many cycles I will have available. But yeah, let's get together and make it done.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I would encourage you, I know it's like it's a little bit less satisfying as a thing, but if you have limited cycles, putting more of them on initial planning so that people pick up tasks that you can't pick up, I think will be like really valuable. But we can talk about that in a dedicated time for this.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else on any of Mike's topics, anyone? Those were all the main agenda items we had. I guess I propose, could we do like a quick retrospective of us inviting the backends team? I think unfortunately we didn't really have any items to discuss with the backends team, so I feel like we wasted your time a little bit. But I think this was a good experiment to try to get the teams together. Does anyone have any feedback on how we can do that better? Maybe we need some type of backlog of issues that need joint discussion.
It could be nice to trade sort of updates on what's going on in our respective communities that is likely to affect each other.
Yeah, I like that idea. Does anyone have anything they'd like to
I guess I think I guess I would
summarize for
say
now?
I think in general this is another example of I guess like to some degree us needing to combat the sort of distributed structure of the whole project. So I notice a lot of problems that are kind of a result of that. So we have the distributed structure works really well, but then there are a lot of opportunities or a lot of areas where coordination is needed. So just wanted to point that out. I think there's probably some high level thinking project wide about how to better do a lot of that stuff, I think.
I think that's right. And also, this was last minute, right? Last week we decided this. We told them a day later, so it could just be that this particular time, the people who might have benefited most didn't get the memo or weren't available or this isn't the time or whatever, right? So if we have an open door once a month for this kind of thing and there's a place and we do it like, 3-4 more times and it's always silence, then maybe that's not useful. But
I mean, a team compass would be a good place to I guess we could say, hey, we're planning to discuss this. Maybe make an issue on team compasses.
Yeah. You're not on mute, but we don't hear you.
No, we don't have your audio, Ian, unfortunately.
Well, that's the problem with inviting the server folks. We try to speak up and we just won't listen.
Okay, Ian's gonna try reconnecting. I guess any other thoughts about how we could improve this going forward? Ian, are you on? Oh, he left again.
He's coming back. Yeah, he's signing on and off.
He left
maybe.
it.
No, we still can't hear you. Okay. That's rough. You can say stuff in the chat if it's appropriate.
You
to
don't
say.
you don't have a button toggle mute, do you, like this? Not one of those, do you?
Well, I'm sure Ian had some great points. I'm disappointed we can't hear them. I guess anyone else have anything they want to add?
Yeah, no, I mean, I really would like. I had to miss yesterday's Jupyter EC call, and Zach missed last week's EC call, and we just haven't had a chance to talk. And he wasn't at the server call last week. I really would like to hear. He had kind of a well thought out version of this in his mind, and I want to know what success looks like for him, how frequently he thought, whether he wanted to merge calls or just have one or what. Like I would really like to have that conversation with him, and maybe I will catch him at tomorrow's server's call. I'm not sure. Because I'm like by proxy trying to make something happen without really having thought through it the way he has.
Mike, I saw you raised your hand.
I can actually have a topic which might be useful to discuss between both the frontend and server/backend folks, which is autosave in the RTC collaborative mode, or rather whether the autosaving whether the user should be allowed to disable autosave when they are using the doc provider. Now, this is I hesitated a little bit lab organization, not in servers, except for I think Jupyter YDoc. But we had some interesting discussions recently. I think with David, who's not on the call, around whether because currently the collaboration packages allow for much more than only collaboration, because they enable server-side execution, they enable observability on the backend when the execution happens and the browser is closed, and they enable access to the notebooks when from the backend, like the Jupyter server extensions, without transferring all of the notebook blob over the network. Now, the problem is that with the current implementation, it creates this huge SQLite database, which is at least as large as the notebook and usually much larger. And while we are trying to address that, autosave makes it much harder because it's writing to this file and writing this blob all the time. So we're thinking for quite some time, can we disable autosave? And what are examples of other applications which allow for RTC, but also have an option to toggle whether autosave is a thing or not?
I think I mean, I know what the obvious downside of snapshotting after some amount is. You lose previous history, but how far back is a reasonable user expectation of history? Like if you kept, I don't know, the last 1,000 states and no more, can we just have something universal like this, or does there need to be configurability there? Like what's the downside of just picking a number and saying, sorry, that's about as much, rewind as you can do?
Yeah, so I think that there isn't much of an expectation for this right now, but once more users get used to having this slider with history where they can go back, they would ideally want to rewind all the way back. And I think it's impractical in real life deployments to not have a limit, because with the current implementation, it will just fill up your disk space on larger notebooks. And what I saw, was it Databricks? Databricks, what it does, it just disables autosave for notebooks larger than 8 megabytes. Now, what we see is people have notebooks of 200, 300 megabytes just because of the visualizations that they include. And I think it would be reasonable to have either configurability or default, where after like so many thousands of operations, the history gets trimmed. Now, I do not know what is a sensible number, because I'm afraid like there's a difference between a user editing a cell and having a stream printed out accidentally, which fills out like 1,000 lines, and each line is a modification.
Well, okay, here's a different idea. Can you drop the history? Like, can you do a snapshot and basically cold store all the history up to that snapshot in a different database? And that different database, the system is designed so that those databases never get bigger than a certain number of megabytes, let's say, and just keep getting added to, so that the history is really there, but it's rarely accessed. And if it is accessed, it's effectively pre-sharded. Like, can we do something like that and just keep all history forever, not snapshot it, but use snapshotting as a way of creating basically blocks of updates? Yeah, I mean, everything is reinventing Git, okay? We just can't, we don't have it. Sorry. Right? Because I used to work for a company whose entire product was a content management system. It was basically Git, but in Java. I can't believe I just said that to the internet. Someone's gonna hear that.
Oh no. Yeah, I mean, it's like the thing about you know, you can't put someone's Git repo in Git, right? That goes crazy sideways. .git should never be inside of a Git folder.
Right.
IPyNB checkpoints no one likes.
Yeah.
What are those?
Yeah, right.
Built into the content server, and it really shouldn't be built into a generic content service, but it is, and it effectively is a sort of snapshotting tool.
Yeah. It's a woefully underserved need, because most people don't know that they need Git, because their workflow doesn't look like it would be useful with Git, because it's like notebooks or whatever. That's just
this really is different. It's really, like, if I have a Google Doc, I can see all the versions of its history, its collaborative history, and I can rewind, have a timeline. That's not necessarily like the Git replacement. It's a real-time sort of Git-like experience. It's not. It's one branch where each commit can come in real time and be trivial, right? So it's like Git-ish.
And they differentiate. If you look at how some of those things look over time, if you press Control S, that makes a hard commit. If you're just typing characters, those will eventually get merged down into a smaller.
Yeah.
So there is a user intent. I open a document, that's a hard point. I close a document, that's a hard point. There is user intent that is reflected in there, and you know, you make a comment, that's a point. That's a point in time. So all of those, you know, real user actions create hard points in time that people are interested in. Typing into the document is not a hard time point, but it does have some cadence of auto ingest. So So I guess what I'm saying is, if one had Dulwich or libgit or something, and that is how IPyNB checkpoints kind of went down, you can't put you can't just blanket git add everything inside of there. So it would be some, managed thing someplace, much like what we have with the current SQLite database. But, something that you could pick up and down, and then things would work predictably without the CRDT backend for things like IPyNB checkpoints. And you would have those history sliders and things like that. And then we could, think about that UI as this is a checkpoint for a single, this is a history for a single user document. If you're actually using Git, then you actually can have Git, right? If you're actually using some other VCS, you can actually have that thing. But we give you this useful history as a fallback piece, and is not being rewritten in bespoke SQLite.
So, I mean, I like William's comment here. Like, that's awesome and a really helpful comparison. Honestly, it sounds like we're just using the wrong tool, right? So we have a CRDT, and we effectively have a time series that never ends. And there are time series servers. They're just not called SQLite. Like, maybe we need one of those. Maybe that's like the real way to do something like this.
So YJS lists a series of persistent providers, and there's like Y IndexedDB, Y MongoDB provider, Y Fire, Y PostgreSQL. I'm not sure how much they relate and whether they could be plugged into our stack. And,
I mean, they probably could be. It's just most of those are like an independent running service. And most of the time, when you run the Jupyter command, for what I have to imagine is a very large collection of our user base, that's the extent we should expect for them to do in a command line, right? So, like, the question is, are these services embeddable? Or if they're not embeddable, can our server reliably launch them in all the platforms or something like that, right? Like, can we, because the reason we're using SQLite is you don't have to answer any of those questions. It's purely embedded, right? So that's what's the time. This is a less helpful comment. Thanks, William.
I literally chose Nats exactly because it's better than SQLite or Postgres for that purpose. And
Yeah.
But not recommend.
Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think effectively, like, we're hitting the limitations of using SQLite. Like, it's not good for this.
So I'm not sure like how much of it is SQLite alone and how much is what we store there.
Yeah.
Currently we store each update, which is great when you think like you are building a single notebook, and this is way more performant than storing a checkpoint of a notebook, if under the assumption, and that's important, that you are adding like blobs of data and the notebooks grow, and like the collective size of updates is smaller than the collective size of slices if you're snapshotting it along the way. But some users work on a single notebook for months or years even, and their history will, like, they basically rewrite it. They delete cells, add cells, and like the final notebook is still like 20 megabytes, but along the way, they went through a gigabyte of worth of updates. So yeah, I think the idea that we could make this like something in between storing the updates and storing the snapshots, and as Nick mentioned, the user decides at which point a snapshotting occurs. And having a save button is actually like a very natural way to do that. To make a like a named version. Maybe those versions should have names. I don't know.
Is there an issue in the Jupyter collaboration repo about this?
There is an issue in JupyterLab, and there is a pull request in Jupyter collaboration just to make the autosave work. But I think we are also having a larger discussion about how we want to like do away with SQLite database requirements in Jupyter collaboration. I will try to find this issue quickly. I think it was opened by the other David.
Oh, the one about dropping the dependency?
Yes, make Wistar configurable.
Right.
Linked in the chat.
Thank
So that's
you.
like the larger conversation.
Yeah.
I started with just, are there any opinions on allowing to disable autosave or allowing to like respect users' preference on autosave? But we went into the full discussion around the problem of Wistar, SQLite, and the size growing infinitely.
Yeah, I think there are several parts of JupyterLab that would benefit from being converted to CRDT data structures instead of what they currently are, but only after we've solved some of the main question of where do we store these, right? So for example, workspaces should be CRDTs, not a text blob in a JSON file, right? Because that way they won't clobber each other. You don't have to auto-generate workspace URLs. And when you do a thing in one tab, you should see it in another tab, the same way you would if it was RTC. So if you make your theme JupyterLab dark in this tab, your other tab should also become dark, but we don't have any way of currently supporting that. And we don't have any way of you opened up a notebook in /lab in Chrome, then you opened up a different notebook in /lab on Firefox. Well, those two browsers are clobbering the same workspace because they have the same URL. This would be fixed if we had CRDT there, but we should hold off on making everything CRDT until it's basically rock solid and we have a good storage answer. But once we do, it would be awesome if every piece that we're writing to some text file that is user input actually is CRDT. That would be better.
This is how
for nothing, we get publishes.
This is how Lotus Notes worked. And you were basically passing mouse clicks back to the server, and it was executing everything on the server. And you ended up in this environment where it was not really possible to build anything quickly because you had to have your entire head wrapped around this. I'm not saying that it's wrong.
Well, that's not what I'm pushing for. I'm not pushing for some universal thing. I'm saying for things like workspaces where we now do this crazy hack where we read local storage, we check all the other instances in your browser of JupyterLab that are open, and we make sure you have a unique URL that you get redirected to. That's a terrible workaround only to make sure you don't clobber a workspace. Just let's make workspaces unclobberable is sort of what I'm getting at. I'm not saying like change the whole paradigm of this front end and make it like a thin client to something.
Well, I mean, that's kind of the argument of you launch into something. Do you want a notebook workspace or do you want a JupyterLab workspace? And,
sure.
and really thinking about both of those things as I'm going to describe the UI that I want right now for this thing. And that can be extended from a baseline base coat of right, left, top, menu, bottom, dock panel. It can be that. Or it can be this other state machine of tree, tab, menu, header, and opens new things. And yeah, I mean, that was one of the original insights from having built a couple, JupyterLab style collaboration things. The locus is the workspace, and creating a custom concept that is a shared workspace. Then everything's very clear in it, right? Like there's now you put the identity marker up in the top right corner, and files end up in there or don't based on the person that owns them, because now that workspace that's out somewhere else, right? Maybe everyone can write to it, maybe everyone can't write to it and can just watch it, which is as far as I got, to be able to create single writer, many reader ones. But yeah, I mean, like a full-on proper schema for workspace that bespeaks a full-on proper schema for all the commands that have that thing come into existence, a way to build commands that you can build your own, a way to describe what that workspace looks like in a language that lets us build Notebook and Lab, is a great idea that then can be extended with RTC if that is a desirable thing, if that is a thing that you want. But like, you don't want to like resize the dock panels necessarily if you have two tabs open, right? Like you don't like which tab is open right now. If that always synced between the two of them, that would be crazy. I would feel crazy if that happened to me.
Yeah, that's probably true. We have to think about it. All I'm saying is the URL scheme of JupyterLab today as an end user is shaped by the need for you to be able to refresh your page, and what you saw before is what you see again. To make that happen, we have to store some amount of data somewhere, but that creates a clobbering problem. And there's a better answer than the one we currently have. But you're right, it's not like flip a switch, CRDT, problem solved. There's like pieces of it that are specific to your, like pieces that should go maybe in local storage with a window key or something. I don't know. We are over time. And I can talk about this for a long time because it's a design mistake I made years ago that's still there. I'd rather not.
Yeah, so I think that was a good discussion, but as you pointed out, it is past the top of the hour, and so I think we should end it here. Does that sound good, everyone?
I wanted to quickly call out and maybe ask for, I don't know if you have heard anything. Let me put it this way. So I've heard a couple of anecdotal statements that people have bugs in 4.4, like, but they have not created issues yet. I've been asking them to. So I don't know if you are somehow connected to users of 4.4 and you have heard about any bugs, please, either create new issues or I don't know, share this information in some other way so we could create issues and look at those bugs if they are actually present. Thank you.
So I think this one 17507 that I linked in the chat is a significant regression that was reported by a couple of people and appears likely to be because of code mirror update, but we still have to isolate that and confirm if there is anything else. Yeah, I'm not aware, but would be curious to know.
All right, great points, Sandri, and yeah, thanks for bringing that up as well, Mike, that regression issue. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and stop recording. Thanks for joining, everyone.